If you already feel that you have learned the basics of writing fiction, but your work is still not getting you the results that you want, what do you do next? Is it just a question of writing a lot? Is it worth investing in more study? If so, what kind of study? You already know the basics of point of view and dialogue and show don't tell and all those standard things that writers study in writing programs and workshops. What's left to learn? And importantly, is whatever it is that you don't know, the thing that's holding you back. Today, I want to talk about the basics. This is our topic. Now, the truth is that many of my students come to me with quite a lot of experience. They've taken classes, they've taken workshops. Some of them have advanced degrees in creative writing. It's a tricky place to be, right? Because when you are a true beginner, you can proceed with a lot of optimism. But when you've been at it for a while and you feel like you should know what you're doing and you're still not creating the kind of work that you feel that you're capable of, it's not always clear what your next step should be. So I want to talk very specifically to that predicament today. What do we do when we feel we know the basics, but we're still not getting the results we want? What's our next step? Before we get into the content, let me introduce myself. I am Mary Rose Wood. I am an author, best known for my middle grade fiction. I have so far published 14 books with Big Five publishers, and I'm very pleased to say that my most recent book deal was just announced in Publishers Weekly. So I'll be having my next two books coming out in the fall of 2024 and the following fall, if all goes according to schedule. That's the expertise that I bring to teaching fiction writing. I'm also the founder of Path of the Storyteller, which is my own platform for teaching and mentoring writers. I will put some links in the description below about how you can visit the Path of the Storyteller website, download some helpful freebies that I think will give you a little juicy something to take away from this talk. And I also want to encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel because there is a ton of free content on this YouTube channel. In the past, I have mostly done live talks, but I am currently traveling. So my time zone is not what it used to be. It's a little out of joint with a lot of my viewers. So while I'm on the road, and I have to be very grateful, as you can see from the backdrop behind me, I'm in an absolutely beautiful apartment right now in southern Italy in the city of Bari. If you want to see my travel pictures, just go follow me on Facebook. That's where you'll find them. So in the weeks to come, I'm going to be adding content to the YouTube channel in a mix of live and pre-recorded content. So this is pre-recorded, but that doesn't mean it's not interactive because I want to keep the conversation going with you guys. There's a comment box below. I want you to use it. Leave comments. Let's have conversation. I want to know what you think and I want to be able to interact with you. Okay. So subscribe to the YouTube channel and please leave a comment. All right. Dive into this topic of what do we do when we feel like we know the basics of writing fiction. We've been at this for a while, but we still feel like we've hit some kind of limit in our work, in our career. Maybe we're not getting the feedback that we want. Maybe we're not getting the response from agents that we are trying to get. Maybe editors are not responding positively to our work and we're not able to get the publishing opportunities that we would like to get. What's holding us back? It's a tricky predicament when you get to this place, right? You think you know what you're doing, but clearly there's like a missing ingredient. There's something that's not quite working yet. It's not evident what you're doing wrong, what you still have to learn. So let's start by saying, what do I mean by the basics of writing fiction? I'm sure you know this list, even if you haven't had a ton of training. If you're a writer or trying to be a writer, you've probably been curious, read some craft books, watched YouTube videos about writing. What are the basics? There's topics like point of view. From what point of view have you chosen to write your story, right? Is it third person point of view? Is it first person point of view? Are you using a present tense? Are you using past tense, right? What combination of those things might you be assembling together? So you've got some familiarity with point of view. Who's telling the story? Of course, there's more to it than that, but we're just literally going to list the basics right now. There's the idea of character and character development. So most of us are familiar with the idea of the protagonist, that there's probably a central character, and that central character is going to have some arc of change, a character arc, right? There's just going to be some transformative journey that they go on. So, okay, we know that. There's a point of view in fiction. The story's about a character who's going to go on some journey of change. Basic, right? Check it off your list. What about description? Many writers love to write description, and they think a lot about how to depict their invented worlds and their invented characters in a way that is so vivid that the reader can imagine it very clearly, right? They want vivid description. They want to keep lots of sensory details coming, and they want the reader to be able to close their eyes and smell the oregano and taste the delicious Italian food, and just hear the sights and sounds and really experience what it's like to be in the world of their story. And they do that through description. There's dialogue, which is basically characters talking. It's super important though, right? Because readers love dialogue. You as a reader probably really love dialogue. I know I do. If I'm getting a little disengaged with a book that I'm in the middle of, I'll skim, I'll just sort of look down the bottom of the page and maybe peek over to see if there's going to be a break in the exposition in a sense. Or it's just going to like get into a scene where people are going to be talking and, exchanging witty banter or falling in love or getting to a big conflict. Dialogue kind of signals that something's about to happen when we see it on the page. So readers really love it. You know about dialogue. She said, he said, people talk, it's fantastic. We love dialogue. Of course, there's story structure, this idea of the beginning, middle, and end. And, writers have sometimes different approaches. They've been trained in different ways about story structure, but chances are that it exists, that there is some kind of optimal way of creating a story so that the reader feels satisfied at the end, so that they feel that this moves at a good pace, that the ending sort of delivers the goods, right? The story doesn't have gaping logic holes in it. So there's all this idea of story. There's a bunch of other things that we could talk about, but these are what I mean when I say the basics of writing fiction. I bet that nearly all of you watching this video have heard all these terms before. You've heard point of view, you know about character, dialogue, description, plot structure. You've heard it all before, right? So the question is there other stuff? Is there like a secret box of tools, of advanced tools that really successful writers, the kind who are out there getting those book deals and writing those bestsellers, do they have access to a whole set of information about writing that you don't? Because if you know what they know, then, what's the difference? What's the missing ingredient? Now, I want to tell you something. And I want you to believe me, because I am speaking from a place of, decades of being a working writer and having a lot of books published. And, I feel I have the authority to say this to you. There is no secret advanced toolkit for writing fiction. The basics, the fundamentals are it. These are our tools. And the truth is that we will or should, is my argument, spend our whole careers, our whole working lives as writers, attaining mastery of these same familiar techniques. That's what we have to work with. These are the tools of our trade. Now, on occasion, not too often, but on occasion, I've heard from writers who approach me and they say, Mary Rose, I know you've got this Path of the Storyteller program, and I took a look at the the website page for it, and I see that you're covering point of view and dialogue and story structure and description and list of all these things. I already know the basics. I'm good with all that stuff. What I want to know is, where do you teach the really good stuff? Where do you get into the magic stuff? And I have to laugh in a way with love always, because I'm totally on the writer's side in all ways at all times. But I kind of have to laugh because this is our job, guys. This is what we've chosen to do. We've chosen to write fiction, which means that we have gathered those tools and we've decided to use them to make art for the delight of our readers. And that's the job. And what's the difference, right? Is it's not that there are advanced tools. It's that our mastery of those tools increases with the more experience we have, the more study, the more nuance, the more understanding that we bring to our job. Our ability to wield those same tools with mastery increases. All right. So that's really what I want you to think about. It's not that there's an advanced set of magic tools out there. It's that we become advanced practitioners of our art form. We become master users of those tools. So what do we do? How do we, if we feel that we've already sort of run around the circle of learning all these things and we've achieved a certain level of accomplishment, but it's not enough, how do we then say, okay, well, now I'm going to try to attain mastery? Well, what do we have to revisit? We have to revisit the fundamentals. It's all we have to do. We go back and we study them again. We look at them again and again. We study them more deeply, with more insight, with more nuance. We may evaluate the training that we've had in the past and say that training was really good for me at the time. It got me to where I am, but now I want to level up, and so I need a master teacher. I need to get mentorship from a source with a greater level of experience and expertise, because I want to now see how somebody with a higher level of experience uses these tools. Right? I want access to that. Not that the tools are different, but I want access to a different way, a more nuanced way of thinking about those tools. That would be a way to say, well, okay, that's where I need to study now. Okay. But there's no other path but to go back to the basics, right? When people do come into the Path of Storyteller program to study with me, we we start with story structure. We go back to the foundations. We talk in a very searching way, I have to say. It's always thrilling for me, even with all my experience as a writer, to be in conversation with my students and hear their insights. We talk in a really stimulating way about the meaning of story, what we're hoping to accomplish, why we do this work. We examine why it's important to do this work. We gain an understanding of what is actually going on in the mind of the reader, so that we can better calibrate our work to create the effect we want in the mind of the reader. We talk about the same things, but maybe in a different way, right? We take things apart and then we take them apart again. We go to the fundamentals of the fundamentals, because that is literally all we have to work with. Now, this might sound a little obsessive or, you know, tiring. It is, it can be a lot of work, but I just want to say that this is how mastery in any endeavor is achieved. And I think that an important point that I'd like to make today is that writing fiction as a practice has a lot more in common with practices like being a great musician or being a world-class athlete than it does with more academic type pursuits. And I was really thinking of how to express this, and I was sort of trying to juxtapose the idea of expertise versus the idea of mastery, right? And if if you're a practitioner, if you're the one who does it, you're concerned with mastery. And if you are an academic, if you're the one who studies it and teaches it, you are maybe more concerned with expertise, right? If you are a great pianist, a world class concert pianist, you never stop doing your finger exercises. You never stop drilling the agility of your fingers. You never stop examining ways to bring more nuance and inflection to the pieces that you play, right? And you may play the same pieces for your whole career because there's repertoire. And you just don't stop being not only interested in, but focused on the fundamentals of what you do because you are the one doing it. You are the practitioner. Likewise, an opera singer or a great singer uh, is they never stop doing their vocal exercises. They don't say, "Okay, I achieved that. I got my voice to a place where it's terrific. Now I can stop." But no, because they're going to keep performing. They're going to keep singing. They have to keep their instrument healthy and limber and they have to keep, trying to improve their capacity to control their instrument, to use it with ever more subtlety, more nuance, more control. They are a practitioner. It's not a one and done thing where you just say, "Okay, I took all the lessons. Now I know how to do that and I'm just going to like hang out in the big leagues." Speaking of the big leagues, if you're a baseball player, do you ever stop spending time in the batting cage? Just because you're in the major leagues now, does that mean that you stop working on your swing? It's quite the opposite. And those of you who are sports fans know that it's the greatest practitioners who are the ones that put in the most time. They're the ones that spend the most time in the batting cage, swinging the bat, the most time dribbling the basketball and practicing shooting into the hoop. They run the basics. They drill the fundamentals. The best coaches focus on drilling the fundamentals. It isn't about tricks. It's not about inventing a new way of doing this. You drill the fundamentals. It's mastery of the fundamentals that creates greatness. So that's the image that I want you to work with. This isn't about, I went to law school, I passed the law exam, now I'm a lawyer, now I'm going to practice law, but I don't have to worry about that anymore because I achieved it. I have the expertise. I don't need to reacquire the expertise. Right now, I just am going to go about and sort of do the job. And this obviously is not meant to say that people who achieve expertise don't sort of keep up with what's going on in their fields. Of course they do, but it's not quite the same thing. It's kind of a nuanced distinction between the two. When you're in the game as a practitioner, you're striving for mastery every day. As long as you want to stay at pro level, you continue to drill the fundamentals and you strive for mastery in the doing of it. That's what writers are. We're practitioners. We don't just talk about writing, hopefully. We don't just think about writing, hopefully. Ideally, we are doing it. We are sitting down to work. We're writing stories. We're drafting. We're revising. We are intimately engaged with the use of our tools. How do we use point of view? How do we use description? How do we use dialogue? Right? We want to use them for maximum effect. So we too have to think in terms of being eternally curious about the fundamentals of what we do. We don't get bored with them. We drill them. We turn them over. We seek to have a more sophisticated understanding of how they work and what they mean to us as expressive artists, as tools for us to be expressive in our work. So if you are the kind of writer at any level of experience or training who has the capacity to stay curious about not only your own writing process, but about fiction in general, how it works for the reader, how this really interesting collection of tools that we have can be deployed with ever increasing nuance and subtlety and effectiveness and restraint and control. And you can sort of keep that level of curiosity and engagement going and understand that that is a lifetime commitment to mastery. That mindset is what makes success as a writer inevitable. And I promise you, it will make success inevitable. There's one more thing I want to say before I wrap up today's talk. You don't have to be a very experienced, well trained writer on the brink of breaking into the prose to come study with me personally. I do get students like that who are attracted to the Path of the Storyteller program, and it is always a delight to work with them. But I also do get people who are really passionate and who love storytelling, and they're fiercely committed to the work, and they may not have a ton of experience, or they may have written privately and not even had much experience showing what they've done to others. But if they have this mindset, if they are passionate and hardworking, they have the benefit of having, this Buddhist concept, beginner's mind. They don't they don't have a lot of obstacles because they come in with a very open mind and an open heart, and they're so willing to learn. They are sponges for the information, and they're often like on a very quick trajectory of improvement because every day is a breakthrough. When you are in beginner's mind, every day is a fresh breakthrough. And that's so incentivizing, right? It's so motivating because you can feel yourself improving day by day. This is actually quite an advantage in some ways. Everything is possible when you're a beginner. If you have been doing this a long time, though, you might be in a different mindset. And sometimes writers who are really experienced and they come, but they come for help, but they have sometimes a sense, whether they articulate it or not, that this is their last chance to get it right, that they have had so much experience, perhaps of rejection or their own frustration and feeling stuck and like unable to get past a certain level in their work, that they have started to doubt themselves. They may no longer have that feeling of just, yay, this is the work of my heart. This is the passion of my life. This is my vocation. That's lost some of its shine, right? Because they've just been through the disillusionment of sticking with something for a long time and seeing how it's actually kind of harder than they thought it was going to be. So if if that's something that you can relate to, then I think you know what I'm saying when I say that that kind of like sense of, you know, I'm going to give it one more try. It it makes it harder in a sense to be open to learning new ways to do things. You don't have as much confidence that it's going to make a difference. You don't have the innocence of the beginner. You may have lost a little faith in yourself, right? You also have probably pretty deeply ingrained habits, right? This is another thing that makes learning new stuff difficult. If you've got a habitual way of working, even though it's not necessarily working that great, it's still what's familiar and feels safe. And it's just scarier in a sense to let go, to drop what you've been doing and to trust that doing things in a way that might feel very strange or different is actually how you're going to sort of reawaken your grasp and deeper understanding of the fundamentals and have a transformative experience with your work. It's hard to have faith in that. So those writers sometimes come with like a little sadness, a chip on their shoulder, a sense of there's been a lot of water under the bridge already. A lot of time has been spent. Sometimes they have books that they've been working on for years. And it's just really tough to admit that it's not working, right? You work on something for a really long time and it's still not working. You know it, right? It's a tricky place to be in, and I just want you to know I have all the compassion in the world and a lot of um, encouragement, I hope, for writers who are in that predicament because I've worked with so many. Now, if you come to the founder of mentorship and that's you and you've done it for a long time a certain way and you know that you need to change things, but you also have this like the baggage, a lot of baggage about all the work you've already done and all the rejection letters you've already received. Don't let it stand in your way. this is something that even a writer who's trying to break through, trying to get away from it all, it will just keep cropping up. And I encourage you to really get honest with yourself about whether your inner monologue contains that kind of, I don't really believe this is going to make a difference. I think maybe my ship has sailed, all that stuff. Just put it aside. It's not true. I can tell you with confidence, it's not true. The only thing that can get in your way at that point is if you stay closed to new input, if you go through the motions, but you cannot bring yourself to actually implement new things. If you can't really hear and implement new ways of approaching stuff, right? If you gloss over stuff because you're like, I know that already, I know that already. And you're not really hearing, not really learning that there's more to this very, very complex task of writing really good fiction than you may have really been invited to look at before, no matter how long you've been doing this. So, how do I know? Well, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I do mentor so many fantastic, lovable, hardworking writers through Path of the Storyteller, and I see it happen. And it just happened this past week. Most recently, it's sort of fresh in my mind. And part of what prompted me to want to talk about this today, an absolutely wonderful writer who's very accomplished, has a lot of experience, right? Has been struggling with one particular idea in her work. And it's something that we've talked about a lot. It's something that I teach in the programs. It's something she's heard a million times in this new context, right? This sort of more like pro level mentorship context. And she came into our session this week, her coaching session, and she looked like a different person. She was all smiles, the little furrow between her eyebrows where she just her frustration was gone. And she couldn't wait to share with all the other writers in the group that she finally got it. She finally got it. And she, shared her learnings and her takeaways with us. And we were just all ready to dance with joy because it was so great. We'd all sort of been with her during her struggle about this topic, and she finally got it. And it was something that was, it's something she'd been exposed to a lot, but she finally understood it because of some exploration that she had done. All the credit is to her. She finally figured it out. And now it's going to transform a lot of the ways that she looks at her work. And I think it's safe to say that it's going to give her a different way of thinking about her writing as a whole, even though she has decades of experience. There's just, it's always possible to have breakthroughs. So, so I hope that's a hopeful anecdote to share with you. I encourage you not to give up. Mastery is a lifelong practice. You're never going to get to the end of it anyway. So it's really never too late to begin. If you feel like, you're hearing this news a bit late in your journey, it's never too late to begin. We're all going to be doing this until we put down our pens for the last time. I just encourage you to learn to love the work. When the work is ongoing in that way, the best gift that you can give yourself is to learn to love the work. Just love it. Love the exploration. Love the sense of curiosity. Love learning. Love trying new things. And seek mentorship. Because, that great saying is like, what got you here won't get you there. What's the difference? You have to have a different input. If you have done the work to get to a certain place in your writing, it's time to get fresh input, maybe a more pro level mentor to see the things that now need to be seen in your work to hold you to a higher standard than maybe you have been held to before, and to show you more nuanced ways to use the fundamentals, to use the tools that, yes, you've already got in your toolbox, but now we're going to see what they're really capable of. All right. Find mentorship. Don't try to figure this out by yourself. It's just, as I say, what got you here is not going to get you there. And this kind of mentorship makes all the difference. I talked a little earlier about musicians and athletes and, coaching and having that master teacher is just such an ingrained part of the tradition of achieving mastery in those endeavors. And I believe for writing, it's the same. It's really the same. And if you want to, play in the big leagues, if you want to be at pro level, you have to have a pro level coach because that's how you're going to get there. Okay. All right, my friends, thanks so much for watching this video. As I said earlier, I really want to keep this conversation a two-way street. So leave your thoughts, your comments below. I will answer. We can all talk to each other in the comments. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get alerted when I upload a new video, which I'm very glad to be back to doing. In the meantime, until the next time I see you, happy writing.